More news spiraling out of the Sesko camp. And it's not looking good if you're a United fan. Or is it? I think you should smash the like button. And then we can get straight down into it and subscribe if you're brand new, because there's a good 58% of you guys that watch videos that are not subscribed. But let's get down into it. Now, if you've seen the latest drama, you will see Manchester United fans panicking over Craig Hope's of the Daily Mail's update, considering the likes of Benjamin Sesko. See, I'm a little bit different. I'm quite relaxed on the Sesko front because for me, I don't want him, but I take him, right? I understand his qualities and I understand what he could bring to Manchester United's side for what we don't have currently right now. See, I'm a fan of Watkins. I still think the right move is Watkins. But the latest with Craig Hope is saying that Newcastle are trying and are going to push the deal for Sesko tonight with Leipzig to get this all wrapped up. And this is all before Sesko has made his decision, which is meant to be imminent, right? So why panic? You're going to push the deal for with Leipzig, and so that puts a more increased pressure on the likes of Manchester United, who has been reported that they are ready to bid as soon as they have Sesko's word of around £69.6 million. Whether that includes Højlund or it does not include Højlund, no one really knows. But what does this mean exactly? I feel like this is coming from a little bit of Newcastle, but more so it's probably coming from Leipzig. Because for me, the way I view it is that Leipzig are going to want the biggest fee possible. But again, it all comes down to the wishes of what Benjamin Sesko wants. You know, there's lots of different things that are being, considered. And Fabrizio Romano even said, but allegedly from Craig Hope, what news he's been given is the fact that there's been encouragement from his camp. But in the same light, I can read it right now. He said, it is not known that what the Slovenians camp have communicated to Manchester United, who are also in the race to sign a 22-year-old. And sources have stressed that all outcomes are still possible. So why panic? Why should Manchester United fans, you guys who I'm going to guess that are watching this video, what is the need to panic as it stands? You know, United, I feel like are quite relaxed on this. I feel like they've approached it correctly. And it's very, very similar to the likes of what they did with Mbumo by getting his green light. And then, of course, that applies a little bit more pressure or a lot more pressure on the likes of the club. So I feel like it's just a waiting game. Now, according to Fabrizio and according to club sources and stuff like that from what we read over the weekend and even today, is that there was this 24 to 48 hour deadline. And that was via his agent. Now, if we're not going to get that tonight, which is not likely, you never know. There's usually bombers that drop around 10, 11 at night, sometimes UK time. I don't feel like we're going to see much until probably tomorrow, latest Wednesday. But my guess is tomorrow. United have got a game next weekend, and so does Newcastle with the opening days, and two very difficult games for both sides. Now, I'm not too sure how quickly a lot of this deal is going to get wrapped up, but I'd like to think on the United front of things are already in place. Newcastle are ultimately, I'd say, doing the bidding for us, making sure that we understand what Leipzig want. But remember, there's a big thing that has gone missing and has not been said. With all these bozo journalists that don't know anything, United is meant to be one of these special clubs. Every time Man United's name is involved, it's the same price of what Newcastle are pretty much about to bid or structure. Remember, we're meant to have some sort of discount. Now, how true that is, we need just the green light from Sesko to be the case. We already know that Sesko is leaning more towards Manchester United from Jan Arga Fjortoft and other sources as well. Can't really say the other guys' names. But with Sesko, you got to wonder, what is his best scenario for his development? He can go Newcastle and then pull an Isak. In the next few years, he could just leave. I see that Laurie Whitwell and Andy Mitten on, I can't remember what it's called the Red Devils podcast or Devil Spoke, on their podcast. And their understanding is pretty much what I kind of understood as well with this whole Sesko situation is, if a bid was accepted, according to Slovenian outlet, who's pretty much not credible, I'd say, and everyone else that's been aggregating, like Sasha Tavleri and all these lot who don't know anything, then surely this deal would have been wrapped up very much by today. It would have been done now. and that came out on, I believe that came out on Saturday. So we're here right now. So nothing's exactly been finalized. And I feel like United are quite relaxed because, well, if you don't go and get him, then we'll just go get Ollie Watkins, which for me is still the better outcome. But I'm very much open myself and open-minded for the likes of Sesko. Now, what Fabrizio Romano said earlier on with his update around 6 o'clock in Italy, I think that might have been around our time too. He's considering his career, he's considering his life, he's considering European football, money, and the manager who play under. Now, Ruben Amorim has a lot to prove as a manager if you want to put him up against the likes of Eddie Howe. Who's the better manager for development? Who's the one that's provided, a better space for young players? When you deep it on the likes of Eddie Howe front, it's been somewhat kind of similar to Ruben Amorim. When Lewis Hall come through the door first, he didn't exactly have his place. Same thing with Livramento. It was Trippier. But you'd think that Eddie Howe might have a bit more man management on his side because Ruben Amorim's yet to prove what he can do at such a big club at stature, right? Like that. And when it comes down to the European front, apparently, according to the Laurie Whitwell and Andy Mitten, they believe that long term, United will have much more consecutive years of European football than the likes of choosing going to Newcastle for 1 year and they might not be there next season. Considering there's a lot at stake for their club and the window that they have had, it's not exactly what you'd call convincing. Where United, they've just bought 2 brand new attackers that could exactly be the reason why Sesko would want to play there, even though Newcastle do have abundance of talent. In terms of life, I feel like you can go, I think you could do either or. I still think for his development, I think Newcastle, where there's less pressure, it's much better for a younger player to go there and thrive, right? And at United, though, I think it's the temptation of it all. Going into United, being known as the number 9 saviour that's going to be scoring goals and pretty much being the unit that United need in terms of the front three of whatever it's going to be made up of, then you're going to be, your name's going out there. And in terms of money, well, let's be real. I feel like Newcastle, Man United will offer something similar. But on that front, United can obviously blow Newcastle out the water in any shape, way, or capacity. You can go give Sesko the likes of 130, 40 grand, where they're even just paying ease at the likes of 120. So, again, I don't feel like that's really a major flaw in United's books. You don't want to give players too much too soon, but you'd pretty much put him on the Lenny Euro package, right? And I feel like with Sesko, I do believe there's a different front that he's fighting on compared to what Højlund had when he came through the door. So there are some more tools, and there's still more tools to come. Whereas when you look at the likes of Newcastle, there's still a lot of tools to be made. They got a really good midfield, and the makeup of losing the likes of Isak. Then there is big shoes to fill. And I don't think the way I've kind of seen and read up about Sesko, on YouTube videos and just quotes, like his mentality is through the roof, especially for a player at such a young age. He's definitely going to be a frightening striker in the next 2 years, I reckon. But it's just the biggest question is fee and how quick can you reach that development? Because at United, you're going to need to reach that pretty quickly. And there's a lot more standards, at Newcastle too. They're going to want to maintain the position. So, look, I feel like with him, I don't know if you guys want this move more than not. But yesterday, you saw when we don't have a Xerxes, or a recognised number 9 further than a Xerxes, you're missing an outlet. If you're going to play a spearhead, I'm sorry, you need an outlet. You need someone that can, hold the ball up, got good flick-ons. And you know what? You need some sort of presence. And even with yesterday with Everton, you can see the physicality side of things. This is where you're going to need the likes of a Sesko, a pure athlete, someone that's going to cause a ruckus. Look at Beto when he was up against the likes of De Ligt and whatnot. He was still a handful. It wasn't amazing, but it's just a handful. United are in need of a handful up front, and I can see why United in Vivell, Wilcox, Amorim are trying to push that front now as now all in one, trying to push for Sesko now because he would add a lot to our team, in terms of defending and attacking. There's a lot of breakdown on Sesko's abilities of what he provide, especially his conversion rate. You need to get him in front of goal a lot more, not dropping deep into the spaces. But he can do a lot, and he can do a mixture. Ollie Watkins is another one of those. He's definitely very physical, I'd say, especially for someone that's at around 5'11", I think he is, or he might even be 6 foot. I think he's 5'11", but again, very strong, very reliable in the air. He's got a good leap on him, and he's very fast, and he runs channels really well. So there's still two similar-ish players, but they're very different at the same time. I just want this deal to hurry up and get done and over with. Like, make the decision. I feel like this is flirting at the moment. Leipzig want this. The quicker they don't get things done, the quicker, you know, it might be tempted for another club. But they got to move on soon as well. They might lose the likes of Xavi Simons. It's kind of a race for him on both fronts. So hold your breath. We'll see what happens. You know, it could be tonight, it could be tomorrow morning, or it could be tomorrow night, maybe even Wednesday. But until then, we'll see what his decision is. Hopefully soon. But make sure you smash the like, subscribe if you're brand new, and then we'll drop another video very soon, hopefully with an update in a bit.